Tonight, our 1976 World Champion, first World Pro Champion, Peter Townend, is interviewing the legendary surfer shaper, Californian, originally been living in Australia for very many years. He's a true legend. We've been very lucky to have him here with us on the Sunshine Coast for a long time now. Would you please make welcome PT on the Couch with Bob Cooper. Give him a hand.
Yeah, it's great to be back in Noosa. Just to give you a little background on what this is all about. If anybody watches TV, I'm sure you all do, there's a show on TV called Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton. Has anyone ever seen it? Where James Lipton interviews actors about how they became actors and what their great films were. And that's the inspiration for On the Couch. And I started doing this in California. Actually, we just did a really fantastic one with the actor Gregory Harrison, who's an avid surfer, who played Chandler in North Shore on its 30th anniversary this year. And also, if you remember, if you're old enough, Gonzo and Trapper John MD. But when Phil asked me if I'd do an On the Couch at the Noosa Surf Festival, I said, of course I'd do one for you, Phil. And he said, well, who do you want to do? And I said, you know who'd be really interesting to do is Bob Cooper. You know, I've known Bob Cooper since I was a teenager. When I started to get pretty good at surfing, we used to drive from Coolangatta to Sydney with a mate of mine by the name of Steve Corr, showing surf films and making movies, one called In Natural Flow. And we always used to make our way to Cooper Surfboards in Coffs Harbour, where we'd check in with Wills, his wife's sitting right over here tonight, and son Chris. Chris is correct, right, mate? And so it's my great pleasure. One of five kids that were all born, I would gather, in Coffs Harbour. Is that right, Bob? So they're Coffs locals. And I think I'm going to get this started by showing you this clip, because it kind of sets the tone for Bob Cooper. It's from Men of Wood and Foam. So let's take a look at this first clip.
The need to keep up with the Americans in surfboard design and production led to what some saw as cultural cringe.
Barry said, I've got these two Californians are coming out here, a shaper and a glasser. You're really going to have to lift your game. Bob Cooper and Harold Fred arrived in Australia, and they came to work at Barry's. And we stood back and watched, you know, from America, going to show us up, you know, really going to show us up. We were just Australian. So Cooper finish coated a board, and he didn't bother, you know, protecting the floor, so all the resin on the finish coat went on the floor.
It was great, because this is how, you didn't wash the resin, you know, the object was to get the board glassed. They're looking at all that stuff, you know. Barry would run around and catch the resin drips. And you know, and I didn't, you know, my style was Bass Pro.
Yeah, how's that wave, eh? A bit of a art of trim. How about a round of applause for the art of trimming? I think it's been forgot a little bit, but here at Noosa you still have to trim. So before I talk a little bit more about that clip, so Bob was born in Santa Monica in 1937, raised in Los Angeles. He started surfing the year before I was born and was one of the first Americans to turn up in Australia. But Bob, let's just go back to that started surfing in LA. Where was the first wave you rode?
Oh, let's see. First it was probably Pellsbury Cove, successfully. There were attempts made along the beach. And
Is it
just sitting enough, buddy?
closer to your mouth?
Closer to the mouth?
That's it.
That it? Is this thing in Santa?
You got to swallow that thing, mate. That way we can hear.
Okay.
So where was that first wave?
First waves. Okay, we we borrowed some friends' boards. We took them down to the beach at Playa del Rey in Venice, which is just a shore thump. And finally, we got around to taking it up to Palos Verdes Cove, where we actually caught a wave and stood up and thought, okay, this is it. And then from there, you went to Malibu, Point Dume. You didn't go to the main places; they were too crowded. Everybody knew how to surf there, so you always went to a side place, a secondary break.
So that was the early 50s, and so you would have been on wood boards.
Of course, that's all there was.
And those first boards, that's around the time of Queeg, right, at Malibu, making the boards there, and the Malibu chip.
You could get them from all those guys, but I didn't know any of them. So there was a friend of mine who went to church, and his father surfed, and also whittled out a few boards. So we had him make a board, and then eventually we traded them up as we got to know a few people, and got better boards from better people. I actually made one of my first boards out of styrofoam. Sold it to a good friend who broke it.
So what year would you make a board out of styrofoam, mate? That's pretty early on.
That was in the old days.
What, late 50s?
Early 50s.
Early 50s.
They used it for insulation and all that sort of stuff. So if you knew people, you could get it. And then you had to glue it up. But we had no tools to shape it with. So we ended up shaping it with a wire brush. That would cut the foam and moved you along okay.
And then once you got through that, you glassed it.
You glassed it.
Wow.
And then you painted it so nobody could see how bad the glass was.
So your skills were getting better at Malibu. So when did you first venture up to Rincon?
Rincon. I've got pictures actually of that first trip. We were up there so early that there was no island in the background. Tropical island there. And it was me and a couple of neighbor kids, and we'd heard about Rincon, and we thought, okay, let's go find this place. So we took off, and we actually went past Ventura, and there's a kind of a caravan park there that's got some palm trees and a break out the back. We thought, oh, here it is. This is obviously Rincon. And while we're out there surfing, a couple of cars went past with the boards on. Well, they didn't stop here, so maybe this is the wrong place. So we followed them, and they ended up at Rincon, the proper Rincon. And it ended up to be Mickey Chapin and Tube Steak.
And what year was that? Like 50-something?
Yeah, 52.
So you came here, correct me if I'm wrong, in 62. First time in 62?
Let's see. Yeah. 62. 62?
62?
Yeah,
So what made you want to come to Australia? I mean, did you know anything about Australia?
I knew that there was surf here. I met two guys who were Australians who were hanging around Vilsey's shop, and they would tell us tales about where this place was and what a great place it was. And so I thought, well, why not? And then Bud Brown came through town with Surfing Down Under. And I saw the waves on there, and I just couldn't believe it. There's nobody out there surfing. So I thought, well, I got to see that.
And in those days, did you come in a boat or did you fly?
We flew.
Flew, and what was the cost of a ticket?
No propellers.
Well, what was the cost of a ticket in those days?
Cost $109.
109 round trip or one way?
1,000.
Oh, $1,009.
Round trip.
Right. And you flew from LA to, well, they must have had to stop somewhere.
From LA to Sydney. And the price remained that same price for probably 20 years.
Wow. So let's watch this other clip here for a second from Men in Wood and Foam. This is another one from the movie, by the way, that you can see the whole movie tomorrow night with Band of Frequencies playing live on stage, the soundtrack. So make sure you got your seats tomorrow night as well. Let's take a look at this other clip from Men of Wood and Foam.
After a hard day at the factory, breathing in foam dust and resin, what you really needed was a couple of good waves and an ice cold beer.
Australia's always had I guess a vigorous drinking culture. But in the years after the 6 o'clock swill, drinking really came into its own.
Over here, you went to the pub, and everybody had their pub. And I thought, okay, well, I got the pub thing figured out. And then they started teaching me about the clubs, which are different than the pubs. And I'm going, they say, okay, the pub is closing now, we'll go to the rowing club. I'm going, okay, we're going to go do some rowing. No, we went to drink at the Carlton pub. I'm going, okay, more surprises.
So you get here in '62, and you're introduced to Australian culture, the pubs, the clubs, drinking, and making surfboards in Sydney.
Exactly. I was under the tutorage of Joe Larkin, who had all of that wired.
Joe had all that wired.
Joe was right into it. He knew everybody, everything, where you did this, where you did that, and so I just kind of tagged along. I didn't have a car or transfer or anything.
And so you get here, you're in Sydney, you're working in the surfboard industry, and if we can get up on the, I've got some slides I want to take a look at. We've got a little PowerPoint presentation that we can get up here on the screen. The PowerPoint, yep. This is early Bob in Noosa.
All right.
Way back when. But I actually, where was that one? First Point?
Down in front of the surf club.
Down in front of the surf club.
Nobody knows what this place looked like originally. It's totally different now. All this sand has come in. The place is a mess.
We got to pause this one because we
could ride first point all the way to in front of the surf club, and it did nothing but line up.
So in those days, the surf club was still kind of where it is now, right?
Still there. Still
Yeah,
there.
but these restaurants weren't here.
Nope.
The Firebow Shacks, right?
None of that was there, but you could ride all the way from First Point all the way to in front of the surf club. And the sand was solid out at the First Point, so you could actually walk along the beach and around over into Johnson's.
And were you guys walking up to National as well back then?
If you wanted to, yeah. We didn't bother though.
So when did you first walk around the tea tree?
Probably about a year later. There was no need to.
There was no one here.
No, there was no crowd. There was no reason to do it. And the first point was where you hung, and that's where the good waves were anyway. The first point used to be like the end of a shore break from Johnson's. It was all one wave.
Move that mic up a little bit there, mate.
It frightens me.
It frightens you.
Okay, so you could get all the way up. You could penetrate as far as you wanted. And McTavish was the king of that. He'd go out there and just disappear and pop up out there where the Suck Rock is now.
The first time you got here, was Bob already here? McTavish was already here?
No.
He wasn't?
He had been here.
But he wasn't?
But he was down south working, and he did Sydney, and he messed around the Gold Coast. And when I came up here, there was just Algie Grudd and Hayden Kinney. And the three of us ran Hayden surfboards until we couldn't keep up with the business, so we had to get a shaper. And Algie knew McTavish, so he phoned up Mac to come up and come work for us, with us.
So if you look behind you, there's this photo of you without a beard.
I've got a mustache.
You had a mustache, but you didn't have a beard. This is in the South Bay.
That's the ranch.
That's the ranch?
Yeah.
Where at? Rights and lefts?
Yep.
What year's that?
Does it make any difference? It's a ranch.
Well, when did
Nobody was there anyway.
No one was at the ranch back then. I mean, did even people know about the ranch back then?
We kept it that way, too.
People are still keeping it that way, Bob.
Well, they got guns down.
Well, they got boats now and jet skis. 2 guys go in on jet skis.
Oh, really? Oh, all right. It's all changed.
So you don't have the beard in this photo. So when did the beard come about? I mean, same era that you were talking about here, we also had the draft and conscription and going to Vietnam and all that stuff. And I heard something, the beard had something to do with that.
Okay, my first bid was right out of high school. And in order to avoid the draft, there are two ways that you could go. You could join up or you could join the National Guard. So I joined the National Guard. And they says, okay, but you got to shave the beard off. So I told them I was in the movies. It's my living. You can't rob me of my living. And John Severson wrote a letter with his Severson Movies letterhead, and I gave it to my captain, and he looked at it and just kind of went humped. And I could keep a mustache, I could keep a beard, I could do whatever I wanted after that. They thought I was the real thing.
And the beard kind of never went away after that.
No, I liked it. It feathered out my pointed chin and gave me some nice features, and I liked the whole idea. It was keeping me separate. And it also kept the women away.
Well, we'll get to that a little later on. But so let's run the next slide up here. You can see it. I've got it on my machine here.
Right.
And if we can run it and pause it, I believe that's Cabarita, right? Bogongar in the early 60s. So how did you end up there? I mean, in those days, the road must have been probably still dirt to Cabarita.
It was 2 dirt tracks, but it still led to a pub.
There was a pub there already.
There was a pub at Cabarita and a hotel. And we'd heard about it. I was with Joe Larkin at that stage, and Larkin says, okay, this place is blown out. We go to Southerly. Let's see if we can find someplace else. And he'd heard about it too. So we tootled on down there. And interestingly enough, on that particular trip, there was another guy on the beach with a surfboard. And we went over there, and he goes, hi, we're so-and-so, da-da-da-da. And he says, my name is Hayden Kenny, and I'm from Maroubra. And I went, I know everybody from Maroubra. And he says, I got it wrong. See, he's from Maryborough.
Maryborough.
But he said it so fast, I thought it was Maroubra. So we got, that's the first time I met Hayden Kenny. He was the only other guy on the beach there.
And so you guys surfed this day where this photo's taken. You surfed this day?
Once more.
Did you surf this day on this photo?
Yeah, it was good. It was always good on a southerly.
And so that became a bit of a go-to spot for a while when
Yeah, it was one of those deals where if you found a good spot, you told all your mates, who of course told their mates who weren't your mates necessarily. So it got crowded out pretty fast. But it was hard to get guys to drive all the way on that terrible dirt road down there. They wouldn't do it.
Yeah, the road from Kingscliff to Cabarita in those days must have been torture.
It was just 2 tracks. The sand mining had just started up there, and they were the ones that put the roads in. And they were just 2 tracks, that's all.
It stayed that way pretty much until I was going down there in the late 60s and early 70s, and it was still a bit of a journey, although they had the bitumen road, but nobody went down there in the middle of the week because we used to have one guy with a combi.
Yeah.
And we'd all put in 50 cents for petrol.
You could make it.
And we'd get down there. So that was pretty much a secret spot for quite a long time.
Yeah. Nobody knew about it for ages.
So I'm going to bring up this next slide, and we'll put that one on pause too.
All right.
Because we got to talk about something that was pretty famous in America when you went back from that trip. You went back for a while. You went back to California.
Right.
And you made this surfboard called the Blue Machine.
Right.
With Maury Pope.
Right.
And so tell us about the Blue Machine. How did the Blue Machine come about?
Well, everybody had to have a key rider. You know, if you had a factory, you had to have a star. And so they found John Peck. And John Peck was definitely a star, and he was an incredible surfer, but he was a social embarrassment. He'd been dulled by too much acid or something like that, but he's straightened out now.
No, John's unreal today, but
he's a guru now. but they couldn't get along with him. They had things for him to do, and he couldn't do them. You know, you got to be at a contest here, flying the banner, and he'd be 2 days late because he met a chick or something like that. So they thought they'd
Or he'd had a bad acid trip.
yeah, well, they thought they'd elevate me, so they had a backup. And so they says, what do you want to do? I says, well, I don't want to do the usual thing. I want to do my board. I want to get my ideas out there. At that stage, I was writing asymmetrics, and they went, no, you can't do that. That's too radical. So I says, well, okay, we got to put the fin off center. And they went, okay, maybe we can bite that. So, and the idea was to sell slip check. That's why most of the board's black, because they just invented slip check. So they had to move this product. So they put it on all their boards, but I had plenty of it on mine, heaps. And it was a good mover. It really worked well. And they kept the blue machine there for quite a while until I left the company, came back to Australia. And eventually they started cheating on it. You know, they made them different colors. They put the fin back in the center, and I'm going, and they never paid me any money anyway.
Did they sell it for you?
Yeah. It's been heaps.
So if you look at that, see in this slide, there's another photo. You can see me, of course, in the pink shirt. This is just recently. So there was a surf festival, and that blue machine there won the show board of the event. It was 400 boards in a football field, and we were talking a little earlier about you wish you had saved some more of these boards, because that board actually sold for that day for $5,000.
Wow. Where's this at?
This is in Rhode Island, on the East Coast.
Right. Yeah, they sold a lot of them on the East Coast.
And that guy holding it up actually had the winning bid, $5,000.
$5,000.
And you can see it was in pretty good nick.
Well, I never got any of that.
So how many blue machines do you reckon they sold?
They wouldn't tell me.
They wouldn't tell you.
But I had I met the gal who was the bookkeeper for the company, and she wouldn't tell me either, except she'd smirk. Yeah, I'd say, how many of those boards have they sold? She kind of would smile and walk away.
So not long after the blue machine, you come back to Australia.
Right.
So this is what, 69, 68?
Yeah,
Somewhere in there?
yeah, right there.
And so the world was changing. The longboards were on the way out.
Yeah, 68, 69.
Yeah, you know, Nat had won the world contest on Sam in '66,
Right.
and then the next world contest was in Puerto Rico, and everybody had a different idea. There were
That's right.
short stubbies, there were pintails, there were still some longboard hangovers.
Right. It never went anywhere. Everything just changed right then, and you had to be with it or not. But meanwhile, I came over here, and Midget says, "Okay, you got to try these out." So he gave me a shortboard, and I went, "Okay, this is it." But by then, I had come up to Coffs Harbour and was doing my own thing.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at this next slide before we get to Coffs Harbour.
What's a beat? Okay.
So there was quite a few magazine articles in that 60s period where they were terming you the surfing beatnik.
They don't know what that meant. You know,
Put the mic in there a little closer, mate, so they can hear.
you did what you wanted. I mean, that's the idea of the freedom to express yourself any way you wanted, and you did what you wanted. But that, the press got a hold. They had to call it something.
Mate, look at those skinny pants you got on there with the black and white stripes.
Those are great. That's a butcher's apron that I bought in Australia, and I hauled it all the way back to the States, and this gal made me a pair of pants out of it. I was stoked.
Yeah, and then so you get to Australia, and before we get to the whole Cooper surfboards in Coffs Harbour, There's a great ad from the early 70s by a company called Cream, who we unfortunately lost Tommy Moses. It was his whole brainchild. And because you were the beatnik, it looks like you were a part of that Cream crew.
I was actually his salesman.
You were a salesman for him.
He'd fill a bus up with clothes, and we'd just go up the coast to every surf shop, and I'd go in and sell them the stuff.
Mate, it looks like
And then we just haul it out of the bus, put it in there, go to the next shop.
Mate, it looks like the stuff the hipsters are wearing now.
It's great stuff. It was good. It was creative. It was individual. It fit well. Actually, Tommy Moses and Gordon Merchant went to the same tailoring school.
They did. I didn't. That's news to me. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
In Sydney.
They both learned in the same place.
So that Cream ad, I would figures about 1971, and Gordon didn't start Billabong till 1973, right?
Yeah, he came along much later.
So Tommy Moses was way ahead of the curve.
Tommy was, I couldn't believe Tommy. He would see things on the road, and he's sitting there one day in front of the television set, and Mick Jagger comes on, and Mick Jagger's got a Hawaiian shirt on, and it's just loose and open and flopping around. And Tommy went, "That's it." And he went and bought all the material he could find, made a whole bunch of Hawaiian shirts, and they sold like hotcakes. They were just fabulous.
And how long were you a sales reps on the road for Cream?
I was with them for probably about 2.5, maybe 3 years, until his brothers came into the scene and ooched him out. He was the creative genius. He really was, but he wasn't a businessman particularly.
And at that time, it was there wasn't any real clothing at all, really,
No, there
right?
was nothing.
Because Quicksilver was just trunks.
I was with Tommy when he was in Torquay and showed Rip Curl how to thread a sewing machine so that they could make wetsuits. We waited for the guy for 3 hours while he's in there giving him instructions. Maybe they just bought all these sewing machines and they were going to make, but they didn't know how to use them.
So at that time, the only, from my memory serves me well, the only other person doing any sort of clothing was Shane Stedman. He had the Shane jeans, remember, with the leather patch on the back?
Save me. No, actually, Mama Platt.
Oh, yeah, he had Platts.
Platt was the first one, and then there was somebody else. But Mama Platt was the staple. She made good stuff, and it was trendy. Other people tried to cash in on it, and they just didn't have the touch.
Okay, so somewhere around this time when that's happening, we'll bring up this next slide because I just love it because it has the address and the phone number. I think the phone number only has about 6 digits.
What about? Well, that was one of my first labels.
Right. So
Maybe my second label. Yeah.
So Cooper, what's it say? It says 380 High Street, Coffs Harbour Jetty,
That's right.
New South Wales 2451.
Place was there for
STD 066 521782. Why Coffs Harbour? Why did you and Wills end up in Coffs Harbour?
It was the smartest thing I've ever done. Nobody wanted Coffs Harbour. Wherever you went, there was somebody making surfboards. And I didn't want to step on anybody else's toes, and I didn't want to have to go in competition and do all that sort of crap. So I went to Coffs Harbour, and Wills's folks were living there. So we had a free place to stay for a while till we got settled. And we did it there. And it was just perfect. The place is on the road. It's got a harbor. It's got airplanes. It's got railroad. So, to me, it was totally logical, and it was great because nobody ever heard about the surf.
And there's some good surf.
It's sneaky. If you live there, you figure it out. If you don't live there, you take your chances.
I surfed there with you at a spot called Trapdoor.
Right.
Used to be kind of secret in those days.
Yeah. You couldn't see it.
That's right.
You had to go all the way into Sawtell, and then up onto the road and look it down. And that's how you could see it. The only way you could check it.
And had you found Trapdoor before you got there? Before you surfed? Before you put the shop in Coffs, you knew about Trapdoor?
No, we found out about it. The locals told us about it. Billy Tallhurst, particularly, he kind of showed us around initially when I was starting to set up, and he was kind of hung around, and we gave him work to do. And
Wow, Billy must have been a teenager at that point.
he was a kid.
That's what I'm going to say, because
Yeah. No,
he's my age.
He he'd shaped a couple, I think, for the backyard crew, and so he just kind of immediately surf shop where that's where you hang out. So that's what he did. He was one of the regular grommets.
And then he became quite a good shaper. So did he learn under you?
No, he's pretty much self-taught. He just had that touch. I think John Blanche gave him some pointers, and he worked for Mike Davis for a while, and then he worked down South Coast and just picked it up as he went. He was a good surfer, and he could just put things together. He knew how things worked.
So you stayed there in Coffs, you and Wills, had 5 kids, and 25 years at that shop.
26 years we were
26.
there. Yeah, then we sold it.
And you just said, that's enough, I'm out of here.
Well, we figured 26 years in the same spot. And the thing is that whenever we got a holiday, we were always coming up here to ride Noosa anyway. So and she was originally working here. That's where I met her, was at Noosa. She worked down at Alexander Headlands.
And when you got here, did you make any more surfboards, or was that kind of the end of the surfboards?
No. I went underground totally. I made them in my house. And I loved it because I wasn't making them for anybody. I was doing exactly what I wanted. The market did not dictate what I could do or what I was supposed to do. And I progressed leaps and bounds at that stage. I was completely self-contained. Nobody knew I was there. I mean, it's a very nice neighborhood down there, making surfboards.
So let's go to this last slide right here with me and you at Noosa when we got the surfing reserve.
That's the logo. Yeah, so my
Yeah,
second,
right here. That's you and I.
Well, I'm looking at this thing here.
A couple of years ago. 80 this year.
Okay.
Right?
Is that all right?
That's fine. That's
Okay.
great. What about that, huh? 80 years of age. Can't we all be stoked still at 80, right? And you still love to come down to National Park. Every time I'm here, I seem to run into you at National Park.
I'm still an observer. I can still watch it and enjoy it and
You're a surfer at art.
and criticize. That's what old people do. You sit there by yourself and go, oh yeah, when we were young, we could do it so much better than that.
And the 5 kids, are they surfers or have they gone other directions?
Oh, none of
None of them are surfers.
no. I've got one kid that can surf, and he'll do it occasionally, but he's not hard and fast. And that's all they wanted to do. And I never wanted them to feel that they had to follow my shadow. They could find their own way and be satisfied with that.
So here you are in Noosa, you and Wills, and I know that you pay attention to still what's going on because you're a Facebook friend of mine,
Yeah.
and you follow the pro guys, what's still going on. You seem to pay attention to it all.
I'm still intensely interested in surfing, particularly all the new stuff these guys are doing in the air and all that. I'm going, well, 50 years ago I could have attempted that.
You like a lot of other kids drew those kinds of things on your covers of notebooks and stuff. Like we could dream of doing aerials, right?
Oh, you didn't even think about it. I worked with Tom Morey for a long time, and he was a dreamer. And he had an idea, and if this is happening, I can see his idea taking fruition. It's just taking off on top of a peak like Sunset, and then ectoplasm spreading out, and you just float, and you ride the updraft like a
pelican.
pelican. That's it.
Well, it's been great having Mr. Bob Cooper here tonight. How about a round of applause for one of the legends of our sport? I've got this microphone here, and somebody out in the audience might want to ask a question or two. If anybody's got a question, they can come up here and grab the mic from me. So if you want to ask Bob a question about the early days, come on up. Or otherwise, we're going to have a drink pretty soon, I know that.
That doesn't sound too bad. I'll have lemonade.
Somebody's running up here, but I don't know if he's going to ask a question. No, that's our TV guy. So if there's no questions, how about one more round of applause, a big round for a legend who here in Wills will turn 80 this year, Mr. Bob Cooper on the couch with PT.